Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. This is REGANELITE here with episode 16 of the Snowflake Watch, where we cover a variety of video and clips online, both the UK and sometimes abroad. The date and time is the 23rd of May 2024, just after 8 p.m. Hello to everyone in the live chat. We're only live streaming on YouTube today because I didn't get a chance to set it up on the restream. So Twitch, unfortunately, is missing out tonight. But it's just us tonight, guys. Just us tonight. How you all doing? Hope you're all doing well. I have had a banner with the OBS today. Basically, I had a major issue, like literally 5-10 minutes, and I was screaming for help, and nobody was responding. And I managed to figure it out by myself. So glad to see that people were there for me when I needed it. The gang is here. I only set up the lava lamp literally like half an hour ago there as well. So we're going to cover some clips from the post office inquiry, and we're going to look at some of the COVID-19 inquiry from Simon Case as well. We will have some clips from the general election if we have time, depending on, and I've got one or two funny videos from as well, obviously with reactions obviously to the general election as well. No poll, because I haven't had a chance to think of one for you guys. So just quickly on updates, guys. So I need to get this. I need you guys to know this now. I'll try and put a post up tomorrow if I get a chance. So I am changing broadband tomorrow. This is not my decision, so it's entirely possible I may have internet issues going next week. I don't know. Depending on how this new broadband goes. It was not my decision, like I said. They're installing tomorrow, so I've literally had to spend all day today, which I really didn't want to spend all day doing content, but I've had to cover at least up till Monday for the channel at least. There is no guarantee that I will have content for Rumble, Facebook, or Patreon, or TikTok, which is actually really bad. If I don't... if I have this new broadband issue. It's a broadband company I've never even heard of before. Like that's how worrying I am about them, and I haven't read enough up about them to know if they're a good company. But again, it's not my decision. It's been taken on because it's cheaper. That's the only reason. So yeah, we've been with BT, and now we're going with someone else who I've never even heard of before. So I'm very worried about it. So obviously I have to wait and see how things go with it. And yeah, it's just the worst. I'm so upset about it, guys, because it's just the worst possible timing to be doing this just as the general election has been called. But luckily, I'm overreacting, and it turns out the internet's will be completely fine because I am in London after all. So I could be exaggerating quite a little bit, to be fair. So yeah, so just to let you guys know. Mad Monk is here. Good to see you, Mad Monk. Jow, good to see you there, buddy. Stu Viking President, good to see you, buddy. Joe Lefty is here as well. Stephen Banker, good to see you there as well. Artibus, good to see you there, buddy. Hope you're doing well. Asato Hoshi as well, good to see you all. So I hope you're all doing well. Right, now that I've hopefully I've sorted myself out, I want to start with the post office, guys. So there's quite a lot to come through, so quite a lot to cover with this. Now I've managed to watch nearly all, I think pretty much all the clips from that have been found online. So I want to thank Implausible Blog. I forgot to update the description of the live stream. I'll have to do that after the show. Lol. Well, not very smart of me, is it? So the first one, obviously, I want to we've listened to a lot of Hugo Keith and Simon Case of the post office inquiry. Sorry, COVID inquiry. It's been a while since we've heard about the COVID inquiry, and I think obviously Simon Case his name has been brought up on numerous occasions before, when we had the likes of Rishi Sunak, Boris Johnson, and whatnot taken to the stands the last time we talked about them. So we're going to listen to a variety of clips here. So again, most of these are from Implausible Blog. So the first one is from Hugo Keith here. I think this goes into this one, yeah. So in this piece here, Simon Case explains the test and trace worked in countries like Germany because they kept cases down, but because we had so many COVID cases in the UK, our test and trace system was ineffective. So the argument obviously here is obviously he wasn't so much taking ownership responsibility for his part, but it was kind of like a collective responsibility. And that's kind of the gist of what you will hear from most of these clips that we get from Simon Case and his points here. But let's listen in and see how this goes, guys. The first one.
There is ample material in the WhatsApps and the policy documents, the materials prepared by the COVID task force, to suggest that by the end of August, government knew that the numbers were rising.
Yeah.
The government knew also that one of the primary features of a viral pandemic is the wave, and therefore that a second wave was very likely. And indeed, your own communications show that you discussed with the Prime Minister the emergence of the second wave in France and other Western European countries, and he and you agreed that you'd have to be mad to think that it wouldn't come to the United Kingdom. There was, at the beginning of September, no vaccine.
Correct.
Although there had been a debate about the moonshot project of getting test and trace to a position whereby the population at large...
Yeah, it was mass asymptomatic.
Yes.
Testing was the goal, which couldn't be achieved in the timescale.
But by September, October, well, certainly in September, although there was a great deal of goodwill and a great deal of optimism that it would work, the signs that it wouldn't work were already becoming apparent. So the government was faced with a terrible predicament, was it not? You knew the second wave was coming. You had no practical vaccine-related or test and trace methods at your disposal to deal with the second wave. Mm-hmm. And therefore you knew you would have to contemplate at some point the possibility of another lockdown with all the terrible consequences that ensued, because you knew from the first lockdown what they were.
Yes.
Is that all a fair summary so far?
It is. I mean, I think it goes, this avoiding second lockdown actually goes right back to May. I think when you read the May roadmap, that roadmap is worth looking at. It talks about harms. Quite soon after, sort of when I started the number 10 at the COVID task force job, we'd already got this mentality. We were using the language of an R budget. I think people will have spoken to you about this concept of R budget. This is mostly in relation to unlocking. I wonder if that didn't actually trap us into a certain way of thinking, which was an R budget. Again, it's sort of one of those read across from how we do financial budgets, which is the Chancellor will get from somewhere and the Prime Minister will get a forecast, which will have in it, this is how much room you've got to play with, this is how much money you've got to spend on tax cuts or more public service spending. The problem, I think, in the autumn goes, I can make an argument that it actually goes back to the unlocking in the summer. The R budget mentality thought, well, okay, if R is 0.6, that means we've got 0.4 of R to spend, so let's unlock as fast as we can up to the point of 0.4. What we didn't have was an incidence-based measure. In the roadmap, and all the way through the summer, all the way through the autumn, we were trying mass testing, we were trying tiering in ever-strengthening forms, hands, face, space, rule of 6, and all of those little nudges on the tiller that were going on. They may have worked. They could have worked. Test and trace is probably the best example. But they couldn't ever work in a high-incidence environment, which is what we had.
Can I pause you there?
Sorry, I'm going off on that.
It's plainly very important. I wanted you to explain some of the thinking about the incidence level. What had the position been, or was the position, that in the summer, as part of the roadmap and the easing off, the United Kingdom had been unlocked, eased, at a point at which the levels of circulation of the virus in the population were, relatively speaking, at a higher level than the incidence rates in other comparable Western European countries?
Yeah, I think that's true. I was always told at the time there may be an artifact of the data, which is because we were doing very sophisticated. We had more testing going on than others, but I'm sure it is right that we were unlocking at higher incidence than others, which always made it harder for our measures that we were doing to try and avoid the second lockdown. Probably were less successful because of that high incidence.
And so, to some extent, the die were cast by the beginning of September, because the United Kingdom had gone beyond the point at which it had made decisions about easing in the roadmap. The incidence levels had remained relatively high and had started to go up. And so, by that time, early September, the government's hands had already been tied, because anything that you did in terms of rules of six or circuit breakers or local restrictions, or as it turned out, tiers, and then a lockdown, were all going to be less effective, or at least alternatively, when imposed, they'd all had to be imposed for longer and to greater and more severe effect because you were dealing with a background of a high level of incidence.
Yes. I agree with that articulation. I'd say it's only myself having gone back in the last few weeks in preparation and rereading all this stuff thinking, was that the big problem? Because I remember discussing with the then Prime Minister in particular, the German experience where it looked like, it was German and Belgian, where there seemed like relatively small measures that they were doing. Like they brought in a curfew, I think, on their hospitality and their pubs at one point, and it seemed to work in, I can't remember which city it was in, but it looked like it worked. And we say, well, why is it such a small measure? Looks like it's working there. And the answer that we got back from the discussions with Chris and Patrick and the data people was, well, actually, these interventions are happening at a much lower level of incidence. The test and trace was sort of much maligned through the autumn as not being effective. Actually, I think it was an impossible job that we set them because incidence was so high, unlike in Germany and other examples of test and trace, where if you've got a very small number of people with the virus, low incidence, and you go in with a test and trace mechanism, you have a pretty good chance of actually locking down that outbreak. If you've got the virus, we were talking all the time about, Chris Whitty used to talk about a number of pandemics going on at the same time. There was the pandemic in the general population, there was the pandemic in hospitals, and then there was the pandemic in care homes. The problem is our pandemic in the general population, the incidence remained so high that these measures couldn't work as effectively as they did elsewhere.
I feel like listening to this and listening to the previous ones, I feel like there weren't enough questions about Simon Case and his input. And without a shadow of a doubt, there wasn't a united cabinet in this crisis. That is for sure. We know that we know what Boris Johnson was like. We know that his position was he wanted to keep everything opened up, and we know that Rishi Sunak when he was Chancellor, his priority obviously was about opening the economy. It was about getting everything back open as quickly as possible, and without the very possibility and reducing obviously the balancing that risk between economy and health at the time was one of the things that was an issue. But I don't think, I don't know, if making comparisons to other nations was the right thing to do. But I guess that was kind of the only thing they kind of had to work with. But there were so many fundamental disagreements within it. So this was Hugo Keith was just asking about the Eat Out to Help Out here. This is quite interesting. This one here.
Eat Out to Help Out.
Yeah.
I think he's had evidence, quite extensive evidence about that scheme, and there is evidence to suggest, quite plain evidence to suggest that Sir Chris Whitty and Sir Patrick Vallance were unaware of it, and that it was, when it was presented to the Cabinet on the 8th of July, some ministers, but particularly Mr Hancock, for them it was the first time they'd heard of the scheme. Yeah.
Just remember, if you remember, guys, when we last had discussed about this in the COVID inquiry, Chris Whitty and Patrick Vallance were pushed out, and as Hugo has reminded us, obviously, they were not in that conversation when it came to the Eat Out to Help Out scheme. Their input was kind of like shun, because Boris Johnson was listening more to Sunak and about growing the economy and that kind of point of view there. Good evening, Tom Nielsen. Good to see you, buddy. Simon says 55, and Solari the Cat, I think, is the other one. I haven't missed. I hope you guys are doing well. Yeah, they should not have been pushed out in this situation. But anyway, let's hear what the rest of it he has to say.
Were you aware that Sir Chris Whitty and Sir Patrick Vallance had not been approached for their views on the scheme?
No, in fact, I wasn't aware of Eat Out to Help Out until it was announced either. It hadn't. I think you've already heard from some. Really, it didn't come through the COVID task force, so I don't think we were aware.
You were the permanent secretary in number 10.
Well, permanent secretary in number 10 working on COVID, and it didn't.
But you didn't know about
No,
it.
it didn't. No.
Mr. Sunak, in his witness statement, said the policy was subsequently approved and signed off by number 10. Mr. Johnson said in his statement, before the scheme was implemented, he had discussions with Mr. Sunak and that he understood it had been discussed with the relevant advisors.
I can't. It's just like these moments. I don't understand how, still to this day, how so many people like they're not having Chris Whitty and Patrick Vallance in such a significance as this. And a significance as this, it just drives me crazy that they were kind of not involved in a really important situation here. It just boggles the mind. So this one here, obviously, Hugo keeps asking about the opportunity for a circuit breaker in September 2020, which might have led to a difference in reducing the need for a lockdown later. That opportunity was lost. Simon Kess said that the Welsh government had tried one, but it didn't have much impact. So for those who obviously remember, as we were heading towards the second lockdown during COVID, you remember there was an opportunity for there was a 2-week holiday break coming up. And there was an opportunity to impose a circuit breaker at that point. And the government didn't take that opportunity. And now, had they taken that opportunity, it might have made a difference here in the UK, here in England. Now, obviously, we can't say that it would have done or would not have done, but it probably might have made a difference here. But let's just hear what they have to say on that.
So that opportunity for a circuit breaker, which might, and one can't put it any higher than that, but that is the word that Sir Chris Whitty used, might have made a difference in terms of obviating the need for a lockdown later, or at least shortening its length. Might have made a difference. That opportunity was lost.
Yeah, because interesting is the wrong word. There is interestingly a counterfactual on the circuit breaker in that the Welsh government did decide to do the circuit breaker. I think it had some impact, but not.
But the reason it didn't was for the same reasons you've already expanded upon, which is that by then the incidence rate was so high that it wasn't going to work.
Yes.
And Sir Chris Whitty has already rationalised that issue and had already rationalised that point when he said a circuit breaker in September, if that opportunity had been taken, might have made the difference.
But we honestly don't know. We honestly just don't know. But when that second lockdown was introduced at the time it was really just out of short notice, and it was really not ideal. Because I remember everyone was screaming at the time, should have done it sooner, should have done it earlier. Good evening, Jira, I hope you're doing well. But that just wasn't the case. It really wasn't. It's this one here. There was no scale up to test and trace in 2020. You eased off too much in the summer, which allowed cases to be too high, which came back to haunt you in autumn where cases were rocking. So a bit more expansionist on the circuit breaker here from them.
And so, is this the position, Dr. Case? There were a number of serious failings on the part of the government. One, and it's a problem that you faced throughout the whole of 2020, there had been no scaled up test and trace process which would have allowed you a way out of the conundrum.
Correct, yeah.
Two, you had eased off too much in the summer, which had allowed incidence levels of circulation of the virus to remain high, which came back to haunt you in the autumn because it then restricted your freedom of manoeuvre when it came to dealing with the rocketing rates in the autumn. Three, in the autumn, although some people had called for a circuit breaker, and Spy MO had called for a circuit breaker, Mr. Cummings had called for a circuit breaker, a number of others, the government didn't impose a circuit breaker in September, but instead tried the tier process in October.
Yes, correct.
But those two decisions proved to be inadequate to deal with the rocketing rate of the virus.
Correct.
So that's the third failing. And then the fourth problem, perhaps not a failing, but a problem, was that in trying to resolve what should be done, there was a high level of confusion at the heart of government, perhaps reflective of how impossible a task it was. You were being, as you described, buffeted by significant internal and external pressures. Bluntly, you just couldn't see your way out of the sack that you were in.
Yeah.
I mean, there were so many mistakes there were so many mistakes, and it's important to that when this is all said and done, that we remember this. And I know right now our eyes are on the general election right now, and obviously the outing of this Conservative government. But we mustn't forget that these are the same political party that were in charge during the COVID-19. And when this is all said and done, you'd like to think that there would be some kind of criminality. I know we're not going to expect it, but still, we know that terrible mistakes were made by this government and the way they handled it. And I think, from its leadership at the top, really did speak volumes about how poorly things were handled. And one of the things that really, really struck a nerve with me when I think about it now was we had a prime minister that was more concerned about, his bank balance, and the phrase "let the body piles hide" was a reference that was allegedly that he said as well, which was one of the real things that really angered me looking back on this, guys.
Yeah, and as we discussed this morning, the consciousness around the harms, the hidden and sort of less hidden harms, was a real, much more part of the conversation in the internal decision making. And there's this sort of expression I think that gets used about boiling frogs. I don't know if you ever heard. I won't bother. But this idea that we sort of got trapped into a way of thinking and wrestling that meant we couldn't actually see what was really happening and take the decisive action. That sort of prisoners of our own mentality, which was we were desperate to avoid another lockdown. That was just all these attempts to try and come up with solutions.
The reality was that you had to have a second lockdown but the problem was that you guys didn't. The problem is that the government just did not want to do it, despite the evidence blatantly being in their face around from the September time when the numbers were going up. That the reality was they had to impose a second lockdown. They didn't want to do it, and they delayed it, and then they were kind of their arm was turned. The Prime Minister's arm was turned. And this is the thing. It also takes you back to a phrase that Michael Gove used to say, is about stop listening to the experts. Well, the experts were telling you and showing you the data of what was happening and the situation on it. And they just weren't, in my opinion, were not taking the experts seriously. Yes, they are the government and they have to make the final decisions. But I think they just weren't listening enough to the experts on this. Sage were making it very clear with the graphs and the numbers and everything that they were showing that they needed to make a decisive decision. And as Simon Case is pointing out here, they were not decisive in any of this, and it's just an absolute cluster.
And we were just prisoners of our own thinking.
And bluntly, the government, as we've discussed, the structures and the processes and the systems for allowing you to release yourself from your own self-imposed prison were not up to the job.
The debate was there, we just couldn't bring it to a conclusion. As you said, interestingly, circuit breakers, the idea of circuit breakers had come up, I think, in several papers that were put to COVID desk, even before Sage on the 21st of September had included it in one of their...
First week of September, SPI-MO raised it.
It was, I think it was, if I remember it, it was in papers in July and August, this idea of circuit breakers. So, but the debate was there about it, but we just couldn't take the decision. Just couldn't get the agreement to do something other than just keep trying all these things desperately to avoid a national lockdown. And now it looks like it's sort of, you wonder how on earth did we make that mistake?
Well, you made that mistake because you had a prime minister at the top not willing to take decisive action, and because he wasn't decisive, you had too much confusion about which way to go and everything, and all these people in his ear hole He was not very clear and guided on what was the best course of action here. I mean, I'm not just obviously listening to what Simon Case is saying. I'm reading his body language, and it does come across to me like Simon Case was more concerned than some of the other Conservative MPs on this matter. It definitely, his body language does read that to me. Whether that is something, whether it is or not from what you guys are seeing, it may be different. But yeah, I'm definitely reading a body language that someone was caring. That's what his body language indicates to me. But whether he did or not, I don't know. This other one here, there was a high degree of confusion in the government's own position. There were times that a minister would go on a morning rounds and say one thing, and at the end of the day, the government would announce a different position, which confused the public. This was another infuriating thing here, because everyone wasn't on the same page. You had confusion as well. Ruth, good to see you there, buddy. Hope you're doing well. I will come to your comments in a moment, guys, on this. Let me just make sure I got this right. But let's listen to this one.
There was a high degree of confusion, at least in terms of the government's understanding of its own position and what the public made of your position.
Yes, I think absolutely fair. There were times when, almost within a day, a minister would do what we call the morning round, going on the television and radio in the morning and sort of say one thing, and by the end of the day, the government had actually announced a different position. I think that happened on a couple of occasions, which is exactly to say, confused the public.
And like, on the same day, on the same bloody day, like, how could you make this mistake? Like, have a plan and stick to the plan and change the plan when you have to. But yeah, I mean, this was happening on multiple occasions. I mean, you heard Matt Hancock saying one thing, and then you heard another minister saying another thing, and this kind of thing was just incredibly frustrating for people, for the public, because they were all, when they were in lockdown, obviously sticking to the rules and whatnot, and then obviously coming out, and then they weren't clear and precise on anything at all.
Because it wasn't giving them the information that, what do you want me to do? What am I supposed to do? There was another period, I mean, again, part of that late summer, autumn period. It's part of this move to try and find alternatives to lockdown. We made a real drive to put more of the data, more of the dashboard into the public domain, including getting more regional data out there. Because the argument was, if you give people the data, they'll make decisions for themselves about how they lead their lives. I think the problem is we ended up putting so much data out that people couldn't necessarily understand it. That we sort of went from very simple messaging to sort of hyper transparency, and that wasn't very successful either.
No, if you put too much in, if you make it so convoluted, not even like you got if you're going to do that, you need to simplify it as much as you possibly can for the average person to understand. Those daily briefings, right? Most average people could understand those daily briefings with the graphs and whatnot, because they were very simplified by the scientists. And obviously it made sense for the regions to get the data, so that regional councils and whatnot can make decisions in their areas to work with, sort of thing. And it was becoming more about like areas taking their own ownership and responsibilities on that. Another example of the chaos in the Conservative government here, with regards to some WhatsApp messages that were sent out.
WhatsApp to Helen McNamara in August 2020, you described the U-turn on exam results as being the most awful governing I think I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And you said lots of people should lose their heads. Yeah. Elsewhere, you described the total chaos of government. Explain, please, why or how the government got itself in the position in which there appears to have been U-turns, a lack of a coherent strategy, a lack of a coherent approach being explained to the public, and an extraordinary inability to be able to rationalise a position and then stick to it.
It wasn't for want of trying, I can tell you, and my frustrations are laid bare in the material that you have. Now, some of the explanation is, of course, because of the inherent complexity of the challenge of the virus and the wider impacts of the virus on society, economy, non-COVID health, etc. some of it is that, as it were, the new things were learned. I mean, the obvious point there is on variance. When new variants turned up, as it were, in that Keynesian sort of thing, the facts had changed, so I changed my mind. But it was also just very difficult, in a sort of human sense, to keep the discipline of government together, to sort of keep everybody on the same page. People had strong views. We tried to keep cohering the view, but weren't always successful.
That's because there was nobody with a cool head in that situation. You had a prime minister who was not capable. Yeah, the deputy prime minister at the time, was it Dominic Raab? He was not he was not prime ministerial material in any way. Boris Johnson had hired a bunch of yes men in his cabinet, a bunch of yes men, just to simply nod their heads in agreement and doing things that that it would appease to him. And there was a lack of actually people in that cabinet who was actually like really making a very clear cut points on what needs to be made here. There was too much infighting and too much infighting within it on what's the best to do. But of course, going back to Boris Johnson, he was not like saying we're going to stick to this plan and stick to it. But the problem was with him, because of the kind of character that he was, he had someone pulling him in one ear, as Sunak was saying, like on the Eat Out to Help Out scheme and about the economy, and then you had the scientists and then other Conservative MPs or cabinet ministers going to him and saying, yeah, but if you do this is what's going to happen, whatnot. And then he goes and changes his mind after he's already agreed to go with the Chancellor on this, and it was just absolutely like, what are you doing? Like, take one decision. Like, don't keep switching your mind back and forth. He was I feel, the main crux of this problem when it comes to organisation, because it stems right from the top. And Boris Johnson was the one who stemmed right from the top for all of this. In October 2020, Prime Minister Boris Johnson listed 22 points on whether there should be a lockdown 2 days before the lockdown was decided, and he explained that we must carry on. If we must carry on with this endless lockdown strategy, we must logistically come a moment when the attempt. Yeah. So let's read a bit more into this.
No, but the Prime Minister himself, in his box return comments,
yes, that's right. Yeah.
On the front sheet of a report prepared for him by the COVID task force, listed, I think, at least 22 agonising points.
Yes, he did. It was extraordinary. Yeah.
In the face of having to make the decision as to whether or not there should be a second lockdown, 2 days before the lockdown was decided. And he exclaimed in the course of those, in that cri de coeur, if we carry on with this endless lockdown strategy, there must logically come a moment when the attempt to protect the population is more harmful than the disease. This was 2 days before the second national lockdown. There had been ample time for the government, as the press had been calling, as scientists in the public domain had been calling, for this analysis to be carried out to help the Prime Minister decide which side of the awful lockdown debate he would ultimately fall. And it just wasn't done, was it?
No, as I said, we had attempts at it, but we could not make a system, generate a system that did it. Actually, by the way, I think, going back to an earlier point about the value of the Chancellor Prime Minister bilateral, I think the Chancellor was really, the then Chancellor, Mr Sunak, was very hot on this quality approach, and I think that's an example of him raising questions with the Prime Minister that the Prime Minister's then articulating.
Well, and obviously the Chancellor, wearing as he does a Treasury hat, but was concerned to avoid the terrible economic consequences of lockdown, and therefore promoted at every available opportunity the argument, don't lock down, because any quality assessment will show that the price you pay for a lockdown is just too great.
And that was it. But he was indecisive. Boris Johnson was indecisive. Literally, like 2 days. He was giving all these points. 2 days before the second lockdown. It's just insane. It's just insane, guys. It really, really is. Just before I go to any more, I'm just going to have a quick look to see what you guys are saying in the chat. Tom Nielsen said, the worst thing is that my GP pretty much struggled. This soldier said, no clear symptoms. It's use of diagnosis. Just care of yourself. Well, I hope you're okay now, Tom, in all seriousness. Sorry if I've not been reading the rest of your comments. Stephen Baker said, Westminster has blood in its hands and should not be allowed to be swept under the carpet. No, it should not. Steve McMorgan, good to see you, buddy. Hope you're doing well. Vaccines are only there to teach our body to know it. There is little we can do about it except to keep it in check, says Jal. Satu saying, I'm so happy finally. I feel good and I'm being healthy. Miss it. That's good. I'm glad you're in a good spirits, Satu. How about listening to the medical expert's case instead of caring about what everyone else's opinions were? Says Solari the cat. Yeah. Why not? Steve, Viking President, says I think they should ask for the people who may never have had the COVID to see if they can help to cure, as it must have had immunity or something there. COVID itself is a mutational change, so it is and always will be around nutrition in future plagues. The game of the disease is to infect after all, it's their nature. Yeah, that's the whole point of a virus, is to spread and adapt and whatnot. The longer it stays around, and they always, that's just normal. It's about how our bodies combat it and what vaccines and what we can use to counteract it. Case has done his best to avoid the inquiry so many times, has been ill as a selfish and vile old boss spaffer. Yes, thank you for reminding me of that, so Larry. Yes, he was dodging it a lot, the inquiry, and it's kind of ironic now that obviously this has happened today, and obviously eyes are elsewhere, so not many people are paying attention to this inquiry, because obviously there was also the post office inquiry, which we'll get into in a bit as well, so that's also another thing. So he's kind of under the radar, this story. Sure, Case cared. He really looked bothered when he sat in the rose garden clicking champagne glasses with Spaffer, says Solari the cat. Yeah, I'm just reading his body image here. That's what I'm doing. Spaffer was out shaking hands with COVID patients, saying let it rip, and Case didn't advise him and those things, and might not be a bad idea. Yeah, he's not one thing that Simon Case is not doing is taking his ownership and responsibility for these things. That I don't think anyone of us are arguing with that. Tenerife only had to fully lock down for 2 months because they managed the situation so well, says Rafe. That's a huge house. We made it up as kids alone. I'm sorry to hear that, Tom. The Tories wouldn't close down flights and let them come down from all routes. My school is an international school with staff residents from 4 different countries. It's shut down pretty much completely in the space of 3 days, says Tom. Preparing the population mentality is very important, and showing that they were doing something, telling us, is also very important. We saw measures getting tighter and vaccinations rolling out. Always remember these 3 lines: let the bodies pile high, eat out to help out, and it was not a party, is Stephen Banker saying. Jura says, I remember when COVID-19 started showing up in Italy, UK politicians told us it won't affect us, etc. It's when it happened in Italy, that's when I started panicking. It wasn't China, it was when it was hitting Italy, and I was like, it's going to come here, it's going to come here, it's going to come here. I knew it was going to come here. Cases as culpable as Spaffer, both parties living up to theirs while others were dying. Yeah, must not forget Partygate, guys. It's really important we don't forget Partygate. New Zealand was hugely successful in its first DE, says Steve McMahon. I was going to say to Lane, its arrival were then suppressing it, but there are many people who would have done anyway with any defensive measures. The way the PM at New Zealand handled it initially at first made very much sense of locking it down. Nobody comes in, nobody comes out, and everybody's checked off. If we had done the same thing that New Zealand had done, we would have significantly saved a lot more lives. There's absolutely no question about it. You say in your WhatsApp message, and Mark said, well, suggests that Patrick Vallance and Chris Whitty will be excluded from a meeting with the Prime Minister Boris Johnson, at which easing the roadmap will be discussed. So this is when he asked, obviously, about, once again, the scientists kind of pushed out the discussion here. But it's interesting, this message here that Simon Case had said.
WhatsApp messages between you and Mark Sedwill, in fact, on the 22nd of May, in which you refer to Mark Sedwill having suggested that Sir Patrick Vallance and Sir Chris Whitty be excluded from a meeting with the Prime Minister, at which the easing, the roadmap, was to be discussed. And you said your call about not including Patrick and Chris was genius. It removed that dynamic. Mm-hmm. In what way, Dr. Case, was it sensible or advisable to describe the government's own scientific, medical and scientific advisors as being a dynamic who were required to be removed from a meeting to discuss the lifting of interventions?
Because the Prime Minister had already had many, many discussions with Chris and Patrick about it. And sometimes, to go back to trying to get decisions that sort of worked and stuck with the Prime Minister, if there were too many people in the room putting forward competing views, it would be difficult to get to a decision that would stick. Actually, what happened in that instance was the Prime Minister had already agreed, I believe, an approach with Chris and Patrick to the next steps, and quite straightforwardly then agreed that with the Chancellor.
But why did you, okay, if that's the case, then why did you say what you said? Why did you say what you said in the email about, oh yes, yeah, like coming across that you were happy that they were excluded? Why did you say that? You're not answering that question, are you, Simon?
Dr. Case, how can you possibly describe the government's own chief scientific advisor and chief medical officer as being simply a competing view? They were an absolutely essential part of the dynamic of the debate, because they were generally proponents for a public health intervention.
Yeah.
So to take them out of the equation, to take them out of the audience for the Prime Minister, you're skewing the advice being given to him and therefore the outcome.
I'm sorry, Mr. Keith, I'm going to disagree with you here, because as I said, the Prime Minister had already discussed these matters a great deal with Chris and Patrick.
Yeah, but why would they not be in such an important meeting? Why would they not be in such an important meeting here? You disagree with it. What, you disagree? So you think it's right that they would not be in this meeting? Because what? You know better than the experts, the scientists on this matter, Simon Case? Yes, you are a doctor yourself, but are you as much into it as Sage was on this matter, as Patrick Vance and Chris Whitty? I don't think you was. If I'm going to go out on a limb and say I don't think you was, Mr. Case.
And if anything, if I remember this meeting correctly, it was about getting the Chancellor on board with the proposals that Chris and Patrick had supported.
Well, then why not have them in the room to have the discussion? Why not have them in the room to have the discussion then? Like, it just doesn't make sense to me.
I think that's the dynamic.
But then why was it necessary for you to praise Mark Sedgwell for suggesting that they be removed from the meeting? That meeting was the meeting in which the Chancellor and the Prime Minister discussed that package. Primary schools as planned, year 10 to 12 limited, open up the outdoor economy, all non-essential retail from the 15th of June. They were removed from the meeting to make it easier to open up.
No.
The roadmap, were they not?
No. That's the exact opposite of what I've just said, Mr. Keith. The Prime Minister had already agreed, I believe, the proposed package with Chris and Patrick in line, I think, if I remember. I think I'm remembering this right. We'd pre-agreed the right answer with the Prime Minister and Chris and Patrick, and this was an exercise in making sure the Chancellor was comfortable with it.
So you kick them out of the room and you say yes in your messages. Literally, it was just like you're happy that Mark Sidwell told you that they're out of the room. Even though you're saying, and now you're saying here, but you said you think that they had this, but you can't confirm that. We're going by what the messages that you put out here. You're not answering this question on why did you say yes, they're out of this meeting, like because it's just as like we don't want, like it almost comes across as to me as if you were happy that they weren't a part of this conversation at all.
I think the dynamic that Mark and I are talking about was that we thought this ought to, I think Mark's view was it's easier to get these things agreed with the Chancellor, i.e. getting the Chancellor to agree with something he might not like, if the Prime Minister's proposing it rather than Chris and Patrick are proposing it. I think that's the dynamic.
So your idea was to kick him out of the room so that someone else could appeal to Rishi Sunak about why the benefits of getting Sunak on board to agree with it at the time when he was Chancellor. Okay. That doesn't add up to me. I'm sorry. Stu Viking President, thank you for the $1.99 super chat. These idiots want us to look like fools. We are not. No. Yeah, they want us. They just want us to. They want us to kind of. And I'm highlighting this because because I know right now all this stuff is under the radar, but I really think this is important, guys. This excuse me. Do not play about with me right now, computer. Sorry, 1 second, guys. I'm just gonna make sure. that I do not screw up. Make sure I just not screw that up. Silly thing. Yeah, thanks for that £2 super chat. Remember when these knobs said bring back Boris, and they need to be reminded of this and just how much people died. Says so loud a cat. And Tom says, and the virus does not care about Sunak's budgetary wet dream. No. Richard Grimberby, good to see you, buddy. Hope you're doing well. And people like Boris Sunak and the lot, they should not receive fat pensions from your taxpayer money. Yeah, I know. He's going to get permanently paid because he was a former Prime Minister, Sunak, as well. And he never even voted him in. So this one here, on the 2nd and 5th of June in WhatsApp messages, you had a bust up with the Prime Minister. I lost my rag with him and flip-flopping, and the Prime Minister had a complete U-turn after meeting with Chancellor Rishi Sunak. Yeah.
On the 2nd of June and the 5th of June, in WhatsApp messages, you referred respectively to you having a fairly big bust-up with the Prime Minister. I lost my rag with him over his flip-flopping.
Yeah.
And then on the 5th of June, the Prime Minister has had a complete U-turn after a meeting with the Chancellor.
Yeah.
Was this not the position that when the Prime Minister spoke to the Chancellor, he ended up believing that the country had to be opened up as quickly as possible in order to preserve its economy? And then when he saw his Chief Scientific Advisor and Chief Medical Officer, he backed and veered the other way. So the civil service decided that the best way to resolve the conundrum, to prevent the flip-flopping, was to remove Sir Chris Whitty and Sir Patrick Vallance from the equation and thereby allow the easing.
No, that is an incorrect characterisation.
On the second...
Well, then why were they taken out then? Why were they taken out of the situation if that's not the right characterisation then? Casper, good to see you there. Hope you're doing well. This idea was fine for children to get COVID because they bounced through it. I recall Patrick Vallance being clear that it wasn't that straightforward and that there couldn't be lasting impacts of COVID.
What I recall, I think I recall this, as I think it was Patrick, in and around that late summer, early autumn time. Actually, it was a little bit, I think, alongside the discussions around segmentation that Mr. Keith was asking me about earlier, was this idea that it was just fine for children to get COVID because they'd bounced through it. I seem to remember Patrick being clear that it wasn't that straightforward and that, in fact, the impacts, there could well be lasting impacts of COVID. What I recall...
Yeah, but you'd... Whose idea was it again about it's fine for children? Was that Boris Johnson? Whose idea was that? That's the last one on the from Simon Case here. You said the breaches eroded public trust. It was difficult for the public to trust and understand what the government was trying to do, and later on with Partygate. Yeah, I'm sure we've definitely felt that way, especially after Partygate. We were already struggling with you guys with flip-flopping on a lot of things.
State in your witness statement your belief that the breaches registered with the public, they eroded public trust in the legitimacy of the government's response to COVID.
I think made it very difficult for the public to sort of understand and trust what the government was trying to do. And of course, much later on with Partygate and all that sort of thing, it's just,
It was a terrible self-imposed wound.
and it sort of, I'm sure, to the bereaved sort of feels like a terrible insult.
And that's kind of all you've got to say on it, hasn't it, Simon? There may have been one or two bits that I've missed out on it when gathering these, but Implausible Blog gathered had those tweets, so I want to thank him. He does have a YouTube channel, Implausible Blog. The link should be still in the description if you haven't subscribed to him, because he normally posts them on YouTube as well as on Twitter there. Just gonna have a look to see what you guys are saying on this before we turn off Discord. Thank you. See what you guys are saying in the chat while it updates. I'm just gonna wait for it to update on one side. The problem with children is that it's not so much that they were less effective, that they were super spreaders. Just ask my teacher in flu season, says Tom. What he has to say about he's bring your own booze email. I don't know if that question was brought up because I only went with what I had there, Solari. So it's entirely possible you might have been. Just let the experts deal with it. Go to a mechanic to fix your car and a doctor to treat your body. It's not, unfortunately, it's not that straightforward, unfortunately, for these lot. I keep talking about my situation here in Portugal, but our vaccination was under the authority of Medical Authorities Association and the military. They carried out the political decision, says Jal. Sumac is arguably more to blame than Bozo the Clown. There is that argument, but I still think it's more on Boris because at the end of the day, he was the Prime Minister and he ultimately made the calls. And he chose to keep flip-flopping between Rishi Sunak and the scientist. So I think the buck does stop with Boris Johnson for me. But yes, Rishi Sunak does have to take his fair share of the blame. One of the problems here is a lot of policing themselves. These lot should have been these should have been public inquiries. Let us decide. Says Stephen Banker. Like economy, it does not care about the intentions or ideas. It's the same mentality. Virus does not care about bigotry's wet dream. I think I said that already. Sorry. Why no one was in prison for Partygate after all the more was just a simple breach. Yeah, the Partygate, like, yeah, but it's the same thing with the post office inquiry. Are we gonna get same with the blood scandal? Sorry for the yawning, guys. But are we gonna get something back here for them? I don't know. I honestly don't know if we are or not. So, going from one inquiry to another, guys. For some reason, I've got them in two separate bookmarks. Sorry, I may, if I accidentally play the same clips, please let me know because I don't want to take up any more time than we need to. But Paula Venables was at the post office inquiry. Oh, actually, what I should do before we go to that, guys. If you haven't already, please hit the like button. We greatly appreciate it. Share it across social media so others are notified of this video. And subscribe because it really does help support the channel. Supports me. Supports the whole gang here. Myself, Ollie, Pingu, and Cash Dummy. And doing any of those kind of things, guys, in a non-financial way, supporting me really does help support the channel. Watching my videos all throughout also does help the algorithm as well. So if you watch some of my videos just a little bit longer than normally does, really does make a big difference as well. Just doing any of those things, commenting and that as well, really does help. Support the channel. So thank you to everyone who does support me in a non-financial way. Of course, those who financially support me, I greatly appreciate it. But for those obviously who can't afford to, memberships or super chats and whatnot, those are the best ways to support me. Just doing any of those, guys, makes a big difference. So thank you to everyone who does do that. So Jason Baird, the KC. What I'm asking is not whether you wish you had known, it's why you didn't. So we're going to listen to Paula Venables try to defend her indefensible, and she's going to be consistently making a prat of herself in these, guys.
That's what I'm asking, not whether you wish.
Yes.
You had known. It's why didn't you?
That goes back to my earlier point, I believe, around management information, around possibly Fujitsu not sharing as much as it could or should have done, around possibly people knowing that the system itself lacked integrity, around corporate memory. One of the biggest lessons for governance in this was when I joined the post office in 2007, there was absolutely no corporate memory alive, at least, of the inception of the Horizon system. I had no idea that it was a system that had been designed for a completely different purpose, that the post office had had to struggle to take it on, that the decisions...
How come we've been able to find it out? Just by asking for the documents?
Couldn't... It just literally, like... Literally just destroyed her argument there. Literally is like saying, like, I hadn't had all the information put to me. Maybe it's possible for Fujitsu didn't give me as much information. And literally Jason has just said, well, I've just got all the information in front of me. Like, she knew. She knew, and she's just trying to cover.
Thousands of documents about the birth of Horizon. the involvement of the DWP and the benefits agency, the splitting off, the contract, the acceptance incidents. You say that corporate memory didn't exist. All of the documents were there. We've got them. We've looked at them. We spent 5 months looking at them.
Very insulting. Just to bear lists a number of postmasters who were acquitted by a jury and then asks, why were you telling these parliamentarians that every prosecution involved in the Horizon system have been successful and been found in favour of the post office? There was a long pause.
You know it's incorrect because you know that by the time you were speaking here, Nicola Arch, the branch manager at Chalford Hill Post Office in Stroud, Gloucestershire, having been accused of stealing £24,000, had been acquitted by a jury in April 2012, having blamed Horizon for the alleged shortfalls at her branch, don't you?
I didn't know that information.
You know now.
I know now, yes.
You know now that Maureen McKelvey, the sub-postmistress at Clannabogan in Omagh, accused of stealing £30,000, had been acquitted by a jury, having blamed Horizon for the cause of losses of money of which she was accused of stealing. You know that now.
I know that now.
You know now that Susan Palmer, the sub-postmistress at Grange Post Office in Rayleigh, had been acquitted by a jury in January 2007, Mrs. Palmer having blamed Horizon at trial for the losses said to have been attributable to her. Why were you telling these parliamentarians that every prosecution involving the Horizon system had been successful and had found in favour of the post office?
I fully accept now that the post office, excuse me, the post office knew that. I completely accepted. Personally, I didn't know that, and I'm incredibly sorry that that happened to those people and to so many others.
You are only saying that because of where you are sitting. You did not give a damn at the time. You lied then, and you're lying now with your emotions. You knew full well in your job, in your role, what you were doing, what was happening, and literally you didn't even answer the straightforward question. You were saying that all these prosecutions, they're perfectly legitimate. And here you are trying to sob and say, I'm so sorry. The only reason you are sorry is because you have been caught out in your role, in your responsibilities for this. Private Eye had been investigating when she was awarded an OBE, right? It was literally 8 years before she was offered an OBE. I think it was in 2019, I believe, when she got an OBE, 2018. Correct me if I'm wrong in the chat. Private Eye had been investigating this. And the Conservative government gave her an OBE. This is just a 10-second one here. Oh no, sorry, 1 minute one here. You say there are lots of postmasters of whom Horizon is working. We should concentrate on them. They are our priority, not the people for whom it is not working. We were concentrating on those who raised issues. Well, that's not true. Just literally because of what you have said.
I wasn't saying...
Can I just test you on
Yes.
your logic there? Why does that logic follow? There are lots of sub-postmasters for whom Horizon is working. We should concentrate on them. They're our priority, not the people for whom it's not working, who complain about a bug, error or defect.
Two responses to that, if I may. The latter one is we were concentrating on those who had raised issues individually, and that was part of the scheme.
That's not your priority, according to this.
The long pause tells you everything you need to know, because literally right there, I literally, as soon as I saw this clip, because this is the one I responded to, one of the first ones I responded to when I read this, watched this, guys. Just this pause here tells you everything you need to know. because she doesn't have a defense here. Zhao says it's easier to catch a liar than a person limping. It is.
Then this is this is badly worded because
Why is it badly worded?
I'm juggling two priorities, and I'm only talking about one here.
You don't say that here. That would have been a more acceptable way to say things.
It would have been a more acceptable thing
and
to
no
say.
doubt you wish you had, but you didn't.
No, I didn't.
You said our priority is to protect the people who aren't complaining.
That wasn't how I intended it to be read.
Then why did you... That wasn't how I intended it to be read, even though that's exactly how I inputted it on there. You can't get out of this. You cannot get out of this, Paula. You cannot get out of this. I'm sorry. Like, it's flat there right in front of you. You can't get out of this. Now, like I say, I may rinse and repeat some of the things that I may rinse and repeat some of these clips because I accidentally mixed them up. But my God. The cat ate all my homework, says Tom. It was the cat. Yeah, blame Sir Larry the cat for eating the homework. Yeah, clearly it was the cat's fault.
Thank you. I would just like to say, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to do this in person, how sorry I am for all that sub-postmasters and their families and others have suffered as a result of all of the matters that the inquiry has been looking into for so long. I followed and listened to all of the human impact statements, and I was very affected by them. I remember listening to one postmaster whose name I noted, who said that he would like somebody to go and stand outside his old post office with him so he could tell them exactly what he'd been through.
Wait, I'm just waiting for her to say, I'm sorry for my part in this role. I'm waiting for her to say that. Alistair Keir, good to see you, buddy. Hope you're doing well. 91 Leeds, good to see you there, buddy. Hope you're doing well. If I've missed anybody, please let me know. Let me know if I've missed anybody. But I'm waiting for her to take her ownership and responsibilities for her actions.
I would do that. I am very, very sorry. I would also like to repeat the apology which is in my witness statement to Alan Bates, to Ron Warmington and Ian Henderson from Second Sight, and to Lord Arbuthnot. I and those I worked with made their work so much harder, and I'm very, very sorry for that. My third apology is really about today, because I will answer the questions truthfully.
This is right at the start, by the way.
And I'm very aware that they will be difficult to listen to for you and for me, and I ask your understanding in advance of that. Thank you.
The Power of Why, the Chair of Inquiry, Skittles, Paula Venables, middle stumper at closer play last night. So it's entirely, I haven't read or caught this one, but it might have been more to this than we've seen here.
So those are all my questions for today. It's just one.
Oh, that's the one at the end, actually. Let me just, I'm going to leave that one because that one was right at the end. I was trying to remember which one was the end one, and that was the end one.
I mean, in his email, he said, you, Chief Executive, are not getting the right advice from the people you've surrounded yourself with. This email gets forwarded to the people that you've surrounded yourself with. Can you see a problem?
I can, yes.
I'm just going to play that again, just for those who didn't pick that up, okay?
I mean, in his email, he said, you, Chief Executive, are not getting the right advice from the people you've surrounded yourself with. This email gets forwarded to the people that you've surrounded yourself with. Can you see a problem?
I can, yes.
Yes, you can see a problem. Because I can see the problem. And the problem is you're not being truthful and honest in your part. As Sakir, thank you so much for the 5 gifted memberships. That's very kind of you, my friend. I hope you're doing well. Amy Lantern, Melzarg, Glenn Perry, Paul Milburn, and Needles TV. I think As the Kid gives these memberships just to hear me try and pronounce some of these names as well. Thank you so much, As the Kid. I greatly appreciate the support. Very kind of you, my friend. Yeah, just embarrassing, just absolutely embarrassing. And we'll go to the other ones in just a moment. But yeah, let's listen to this here right at the end. Obviously, I turned the volume down because it was quite loud. But this one.
So those are all my questions. For
If the volume is too loud or too high, please let me know in the comments, and I'll play it again, guys.
today, it's just on 4:30.
Yeah, just before we break, can I just go back to that additional briefing document that you got the day before or during the morning of, excuse me, the select committee hearing. And Mr. Beer asked you questions on the basis of it was laying out a strategy for you, all right? And you had that debate.
Yes.
If I were to suggest to you that you were being advised to be very precise, very circumspect, and very guarded about what you said, that was the effect of that document. Would you agree?
I would, Sir Wyn. I'm not sure I would have noticed that on the morning of the day.
But you'll see the point in a moment. That was the effect that was trying to be created by those who created that document.
It could have been, yes.
Right.
Yes.
Why?
Again, like these long pauses. And I actually think, like, hearing the people chuckling in the background, I'm gonna say this, yeah, because obviously because she's been caught red-handed with hands in cookie jars and whatnot, and it's great that she's been thrown under the bus here. But if I'm absolutely being honest, those people who are laughing, they should not be laughing. There is nothing about this inquiry, just like the COVID inquiry, to be laughing about. Like, even if you are one of the victims in that room, there is nothing to be laughing about here. I don't know why there are people actually having a bit of a laugh about when she's caught out, because it's not something to be not something for that. Especially if you're in that room, you should not be laughing. Like, you should be feeling a great deal of anger of what this woman has done, of what she knew, and intentionally trying to hide what happened.
With hindsight, because possibly...
And if you need time to think about it, you can tell me in the morning.
No, I don't.
No, that's enough now.
I haven't paused it, by the way.
It's a question that I have to pose for myself. So I'd like your help with the answer.
Yes, I understand the question.
And you can't answer because you don't have a straightforward answer.
At the time, I didn't answer the question. I didn't ask the question. It didn't cross my mind at all. And this may be back to the point I made at the beginning of the day, that I could be too trusting of people. I took the information that I was given and went into a select committee. Why might they have set it out that way? With what I know now, it is, but I find it very difficult, because I knew that the people who were producing that document, but from what I know now, maybe other people knew more than I did, and they were trying to direct me to answer in a certain way.
All right. So I think we'll adjourn at that point, Mr. Beer, till tomorrow morning. Is it 9:45?
So yeah, I think she's got another one tomorrow. But I'm just gonna play this. This is the reaction from some of the people, the reaction of some of the victims for how Paula Venables was breaking down in tears.
We're talking about a person that could have actually stopped this. People have lost their lives, families are being ruined, relationships are being ruined.
As we've seen again today, I don't recall. We're sick of it.
I don't recall, don't have the straightforward answers, dodging the questions again. Yeah, it's and this here, like just this bit here from LBC. Paula Venables was given a CBE because she covered up the post office scandal, not in spite of it. And in Hislop, we'll speaking to Andrew Maher on LBC, kind of highlights this as well.
Of course, Ed Davey is famous for calling for other people to resign over all sorts of things. Perhaps this should be his moment.
Indeed. And also, I mean, Ed Davey's taking all the flack, but there are a string of Conservative ministers after him who in many ways are more culpable because even more was known. I mean, this government gave Paula Venables a CBE in 2019. That's 8 years after we started writing about it, years after it was common knowledge in the media. I mean, do they not read any of the papers? Why on earth was this woman given an honour? I mean, I know our honours system is now permanently a disgrace.
Ludicrous.
But
Absolutely ludicrous, yeah.
This one is just ignorant and stupid, and it's unbelievable it was ever made.
Of course.
It was. They knew, and they still gave it to her. That's how screwed up this Conservative government is. Absolutely insane, guys. Absolutely insane. I'm just going to play this last one here. This was from 2 hours ago. So a bit of a summary from Sky News here on it, from maybe one or two bits we might have missed on this as well.
If the first yesterday of Paula Venables' evidence was about the finally seeing a figure who'd been waiting 9 years to face any public scrutiny, and her tears and apologies as she appeared today was much more substantial, and it really came down to extended scrutiny of what she knew, and when she did finally concede she knew about the failings in the Horizon IT system and other flaws within the Post Office convictions. What she did about it, what emerged as we heard in that exchange we've just played, is what appears to be an obsession with spin, with media management, with publicity over and above the concerns of the sub-postmasters who were going to jail on her watch.
She knew. Look, she changed her tune on the second day. She changed her tune. So she was already switching things up already.
She'd actually proposed a really extensive review of all false accounting charges over perhaps 5 or 10 years. And it was that idea that we heard the communications director rebuffing there because it would become front page news. She was actually asked by inquiry counsel Jason Beer if that failure to go ahead with her idea of a full review amounted to a lost decade in uncovering miscarriages of justice, and she accepted that it did, which was quite the admission. 10 years wasted, effectively, the chief executive of the Post Office told us. It was a rare straight answer. Her evidence perhaps peaked. She said repeatedly that she can't recall things over the last 2 days. I think it peaked with this in response to a question about a board meeting. She told the inquiry, "My recollection is that I can't recall." She's got another day of this tomorrow.
She's got another day of this tomorrow. And how much of this is I can't recall is she not going to remember, guys? It's just ridiculous. Just ridiculous. Let's see what you guys are saying in the chat. I've got actually no clips on Gaza. We'll cover a couple of general election ones for you guys in a bit as well. Infuriating. Yep, that's the right word, Jal. Good to see you, One Angry Pagan. Hope you're doing well. I tell her voices is full of fish. I hear no regret, no reason of rhythm, but I think she's a pasty. Says Stephen Banker. She was in the mastermind in this office debacle, says Stephen Banker. How did she fall so far upwards? Utterly incompetent, says Joe Lefty. I know I'm half German and a little too direct, but why in Alden's name can't these people answer a bloody question? Yeah, absolutely agree, Jal. That's one of the things that they just don't have this capability of being able to answer simple questions. Not laughing personally, but I don't advocate violence, but yeah, we're not advocating violence on anyone. Every time she pauses, I think I'm buffering, says Joe Lefty. Yeah, I know, because you guys can't tell when I'm pausing when it's not pausing. But the fact that she was pausing, and I actually had to say to you guys, I haven't paused the clip to indicate to you guys, yes, she's holding her pause and thinking at that time. That's how crazy it was. They waste too much time and money with these people, says Jow. To Steve McMoran. There. If you were trained to read physical reactions, you know she is lying and thinking, how am I going to escape this one? And the thing is right, like even a smart liar or competent liar, you know, you would think that someone in her position and power, she would know that surely she would have known when she was going into these days of inquiry. Surely you would have think, yeah, okay, I know I'm going to be getting these questions. How am I going to take these on? What am I going to expect? She should have had her own people saying, okay, this is what I need to do to combat all these questions and whatnot here. Not. Oh, by the way, I can't stop the microphone changing colours, so if it does make weird colours and all that, I sincerely apologise. I don't know if I can turn it down maybe a little bit. That might help, but apologies for that. Long pause, buzzer press, please. Just send her straight to jail. If only it was that simple. But yeah, it's just like, did she not prepare properly for this case? Prepare for her sitting down in this inquiry? Clearly, she did not. Nothing will happen, Stephen Moore. Reason for my comment is what the objective, since it's wasting time and making them pay for the actions, but that's the UK law for you. I tell her voices. Yeah, I've read that already. Yeah. So let's. This is a great clip here, guys. So we'll have a look at a couple of clips from on the general election. But just before we do, guys, because probably they'll do a couple more, and then we'll do some funny videos and wrap things up. If you guys want to financially support me in any way, you can do so by becoming a YouTube member for as little as 99p. Being the YouTube member really does make a massive difference. It financially supports the work that myself, Ollie, Cash Dummy, and Pingu does here. So if you do doing any way to financially support me, greatly appreciate it. You can do it for just 99p. 99p doesn't cost you anything. It's just 99p a month, guys. Really makes this may not seem like a lot of money, but it really doesn't make a big deal. That does if you do that. Or the $2.99 membership, where you get early access to content. So content that's dropping tomorrow, which is Friday. Those who are Snowflake corporals here in the chat know that they can actually get access to that content straight away, right now, if they wanted to. And they will get access to content coming up over the next couple of days before anybody else, because I've already uploaded it. I just haven't made it available for the members, so I'll have that available to members tomorrow. That'll be available to members before content drops on Saturday, Sunday, Monday, respectively. So if you are a Snowflake Corporal at $2.99 a month, you get early access to all those content as well. With the 99p memberships, get access to the custom emojis, and whenever you comment on any of my videos as a member, you always get a response from me for that. Otherwise, if you want to financially support me, a super chat. I'll obviously read out super chats. If you guys do any super chats, I'd greatly appreciate. Other ways you could do so as well is by joining my Patreon or buying me a coffee. Links for those are in the description. If you join the Patreon, you get access to exclusive content only on the Patreon. So if you join the Patreon, guys, for a small fee, you can be a part of the tiny little community of the lovely bunch of people that I have part of that community there. And yeah, they get exclusive content on there as well. So thank you for everyone who has financially supported me in any way, shape or form. It really, really does appreciate it. So if you do any of those, guys, thank you so much. So we're going to do a little bit on the general election, guys. So I thought this was a very nice one. Now, I know this isn't exactly a politician, or I'm not familiar with this person, but I thought his speech really just sums up the feeling about how the country is feeling here. This is from fashion entrepreneur Patrick Grant, and this was on a debate night on the BBC, and I thought this was very telling. And I hope you guys enjoy this.
I can't help feeling that we've had a government that has done more harm and done less good to both the country and the general population than any government that I'm 50 years old, 52 years old. I mean, most governments in the past, whatever way you vote, you could probably point to something that they've done that has made something better for somebody. But I genuinely cannot think of a single thing that this government has done that has made anything better for anybody. And I can probably spend the next hour listing things that they've made worse. My mother's here in the audience. Healthcare is a waiting list for healthcare at an all-time low. House prices are unaffordable to most people. We can't afford our energy bills. Our public transport is a disaster area. Public services are not public services. We've got private companies making large profits while we suffer terrible services. There is nothing that this Conservative government has done that hasn't made everybody's life worse. And I cannot tell you how happy I was to hear that this was happening. The timing of it seems very particular. There was Rishi Sunak said today that they've got the economy back on track. I mean, what they've done is they've got inflation to a level where it's making things bad less quickly. We're all struggling to pay our bills. This isn't good. Better times are ahead, he said. But no, it's not. Better times are not ahead. We're all struggling. Inflation, pay is not keeping up with inflation yet. The cost of everything is going up. It is absolutely time that we got better politics. I'm interested to have politicians who are there to serve the public. I feel like the current lot are just somewhat shambolic. I mean, they've just sort of given up. You get the impression that they've had enough, and I don't know why they didn't go before.
It's very well said here from Patrick Grant, a fashion entrepreneur here, and he really, really hit, exactly how not just how I feel, but I think many of you here in the chat feel about the current state of affairs here. And we still go back and look at that question: why did he not call the general election sooner? Dave McGuinness, good to see you, buddy. I hope you're doing well. Thanks for popping in, as always, much appreciated, my friend. I was there for the whole show, for the Two Davies show earlier. I just was lurking throughout most of it. But I was there, buddy. I was there today. But he really does speak a lot about how he feels. And you see, the thing is he's not praising Labour either. He's not praising a particular party. He's just saying how the country, how people generally feel right now in the country. And they don't feel any sense of hope or optimism right now with the Conservatives. They don't feel that things will get better. They don't feel that there's a bright future ahead with the Rishi Sunak and the Conservatives. And it does feel like a damp squid. There was actually there's a short story that's going to be dropping over the next couple of days, and I'll spoil it now for you guys, where, I kid you not, Conservative MPs, rather than being at the campaign rally on Wednesday night for Sunak, do you know where they were? They were in the bar in Parliament drinking because they were like, we're so screwed. Instead of actually rallying behind the Prime Minister, they're like just going to drink their souls away instead of join the Prime Minister in actually this election rally. And it just shows just that. There's so many examples of how disunited the Conservative Party are. But that just in itself is just like, yeah, I'm just going to go and drink till I drop. This has got to be the if there's a fool of the week for Max, if Robespierre, if you are hearing this, please go find it. If you want this clip, I will send this to you guys. This is without a doubt the fool of the week here. Danny Kruger says, we've been in power for a long time. We represent the change. Labour represent more of the same. They would carry on the failed British state, which has caused so many problems. Blaming Labour for 14 years of Conservative failure. This has got to be fool of the week.
Power for a long time, and I recognise people feel like it's time for change. Actually, we represent the change that's needed. Labour represent more of the same. They might have different faces, but they would be the ones carrying on the failed British state that has caused so many problems for our country.
What? Failed state? You're the one party's been in power for 14 years. I'm going to play that again, so you guys can understand just how bloody stupid this is.
Power for a long time, and I recognise people feel like it's time for change. Actually, we represent the change that's needed. Labour represent more of the same. They might have different faces, but they would be the ones carrying on the failed British state that has caused so many problems for our country. In power for a long time.
You know what? I'm going to send this in a DM to Max on Twitter and say to him, here's your fall of the week. Like, this has to be the fall of the week. Like, there's been a lot of falls, but this statement here, like, it has to be the most stupidest of statements of all. Because he's accepting that the British state has failed. But he's blaming Labour for it. I can't. Like, I get, like, I'm with you guys. Like, well, I have my doubts about Labour. But you can't blame Labour for the last 14 years. Oh, Jesus Christ. What is wrong with some of these people? Man with common sense, a bit of common sense, shall we say. Pat McFadden here. Obviously, he's the Labour campaign coordinator here. And obviously, let's hear what he had to say, obviously, about the general election being called.
Expecting the announcement yesterday because the Prime Minister had given us indications that he was going to wait till the autumn on the basis that his plan was working. Turns out he doesn't even have faith in his own plan. I'm not sure why anyone else should have. And therefore, he's decided to call an election now because he thinks this is as good as it's going to get. So, well, we weren't expecting it. We'll fight the election. We'll take our case for change to the British public out there, and we look forward to doing that over the next 6 weeks.
So you weren't expecting it, therefore you weren't ready. Are you having to run to catch up?
No.
Now that's just nonsense. Now, I generally believe that while the 6 plans are definitely scrutinised, their manifesto will be launched very soon. We'll be launching very, very, very soon. Especially if Phil from Different Bias is saying it's pretty much ready, there's a good chance it probably is. So to say that Labour are not ready is absolutely folly. But we know he's a Tory stooge anyway, Richard. So we shouldn't be taking anything he says seriously. Labour have been saying that they are ready to run the country. They're ready to take over. They've been saying that. It's the Conservatives it's the incumbency is on the Conservatives here.
We've been preparing for some time. We know how we want to approach this election whenever the Prime Minister chose to call it. I spoke to the Labour Party staff last night. They are very up for the fight. They're in good spirits. We go into this election with belief, but also knowing the size of the task in front of us. Because asking the public to put their trust in you to govern the country is an awesome thing to do. And we know the responsibilities that come with that. So we go into it with belief, but assuming nothing about the outcome, because change will only come to the country if people actually go out and vote for it.
One of the reasons why we were asking if you're ready is because, of course, just a couple of days ago, your shadow health spokesperson, Wes Streeting, couldn't remember all 6 of your pledges. Can you reel them off quickly to us?
I've been expecting this question this
I
morning.
hope you've done your revision.
Go on then. So we're going to start by delivering economic stability to grow the economy. We're going to cut NHS waiting times. We're going to set up a new border security command. We're going to set up GB Energy, a publicly owned energy company, to drive the energy transition. We're going to crack down on antisocial behaviour, and we're going to employ 6,500 new teachers to get opportunity to children.
Can I just check you didn't have that on autocue, because that was word perfect, Pat McFadden.
He's learned it.
Not only should I learn it, but this is the core of the case that we're going to take to the British public over the next 6 weeks.
Okay. And it wasn't on, just checking, it wasn't on the screen in front of you.
No, it's probably on a paper in front of him. But like this is just pointless having this question put, really, if I'm honest. Like, they're going to have it rammed in their heads anyway, these 6 pledges anyway, to be fair. But this next one here, guys, this another one that may be a little bit chuckle, a little bit here, what you hear here. So Susanna Rees asks, would you have put Prime Minister Boris Johnson outside number 10 on a rainy, pouring day? Google Harry says, when you're wearing such an expensive suit, it's criminal to send out a man in the rain like that. But just there's a part here that I want you to pay attention, because there's a part of this where he basically tries to imply that by putting Rishi Sunak out there in the rain, it makes him look like the underdog.
Gito Harry, would you ever have put your Prime Minister outside number 10 on a day of pouring rain when you know that Steve Bray, the Brexit protester, has very loud speakers?
Indeed. So hands up, Boris did resign out there in the same spot and was drowned out a bit by that. And
but not rain, not on a rainy day.
Not the rain, no. And I think when you're wearing such an expensive suit, it's criminal to sort of send the man out.
Who gives a monkeys about the goddamn suit?
Into the rain in a suit like that. No, there's a perfectly wonderful, very expensive media suite inside number 10. You've probably been in it. It's well lit, it's dry. It would have been better for all.
So it was a mistake.
Yes, but I guess you start with, you know, how do you make a guy who's richer than the king look like the underdog? You put him in his expensive suit out there in the rain, and the only way is up.
Okay.
But okay, you're trying to paint this image here, right, of Rishi Sunak is the underdog. Yes, in terms of polling, in case of the public feel, Rishi Sunak is the underdog. But you don't go making the Prime Minister look like a freaking prat in front of the entire globe. And that's exactly what they did here. And they could have used that room. They had. But they chose not to do that. They chose to do it on a miserable wet day as well. They could have easily had done what they could have done. They could have had this, right? Have him coming out there doing his speech like this. You know what they really could have done? Yeah? It's really not rocket science. They could have just got someone literally to stand close enough to him to put a brolly under him while he gave the speech. Because you would not need to see the person in that screen right now that you're looking at, because obviously that was the way the speech was given. You could have had someone just standing just far enough away to put an umbrella that's big enough under him so he wouldn't get goddamn soaked. You could have done that. But no, you wanted to paint this picture that he's an underdog. No, it just made him look like an absolute prat. And that's what more can I possibly say on that, guys?
Okay, sorry.
And so a bad start, but the only way is up.
So it was deliberate?
No.
So it wasn't deliberate. Then why do it?
Did they do it, Gita? I've heard that it was Rishi Sunak who wanted to do it because it's a tradition and he wanted to do the, you know, as you say, the Prime Minister at the lectern, talking to the people. If he'd been inside, he would have just been talking to journalists.
You look like it out of touch, you're in a bunker, and that's true. And that is one of the most famous doors in the world. So you are going to want to use it. And the weather was meant to clear up. It did clear up very, very briefly. I don't know if this is a metaphor. And then there was a break in the clouds, and out he goes, and then it started pouring again. So
you're right. When he came out, it was drizzling, and it did suddenly open.
Yeah, the gods were waiting for him to come out, and then the monsoon came. A brolly under him would have looked even more like a prat. Not in that. If the way I depicted Artibus is that if the person you don't like the camera is the way the camera obviously was focused on him at the speech. Yeah, you could have had someone with a brolly under. You know, there's big enough brollies. You know, for someone to basically do that for him in that situation. I know it look a little bit daft if you pull the screen back and showing him standing, showing a person holding an umbrella on his behalf. And I don't think it would have been that. I don't think the image would have been that bad. But you mean over him? Yes. Sorry, Artibus. Yeah. But it's just. So this is the last one I'm going to play for you guys, and then we'll go to some funny clips because we have been going for quite a while now. Politics Channel, good to see you, buddy. Hope you're doing well. I just want to, just Sophie Richards, just highlighting what some of the people were doing today.
Well, I'm back in the studio tonight after an extraordinary day yesterday outside Downing Street, covering the election announcement from Rishi Sunak that I think it's fair to say caught the entire political class off guard. The parties, though, have reacted pretty quickly, and the campaign launches have come thick and fast throughout the day, and you can tell a lot from where in the country the politicians are jetting off to. So I'm going to take you on a bit of a tour of the UK. So after his big launch last night, Rishi Sunak set off on a whistle-stops tour around Britain. After a Q&A in Derbyshire here, he then stopped by a brewery in Barry, and now he's all the way up in Inverness.
Don't tell the Scots.
It was a bit of a more muted day for Keir Starmer, though. He kicked off Labour's campaign in Gillingham in Kent. There is a seat held by the Conservatives, which always tells you something. And Ed Davey and the Lib Dems, they were in Cheltenham. That's one of their key targets. Now, they're the dominant party on the local council there, but the parliamentary seat is held by a big Conservative name, the Justice Secretary, Alex Chalk, potentially in the Lib Dem sites. Elsewhere, there were keynote speeches in Edinburgh from the SNP's new leader, John Swinney. He's only been in post a couple of weeks, talk about baptisms of fire. And also in London from Reform UK's leader, Richard Tice, who will be joining us in the studio.
We don't need to. We don't want to hear from him. I'm just going to throw this last one actually in here.
Yeah. I don't think they've got a cat in hell's chance. So I voted Tory all my life, but I would never trust them again. They've just let us down.
Are we?
Yeah, he's voted Tory all his life, and he will never trust them again. Is there any other clips worth listening to? Should I succumb you guys to even more? Probably not a good idea. Do we want to hear from Richard Tice? No, we do not. No, let's. I think I've played more than enough, and it is gone past 9:30. I'm just going to come to you guys in the chat, and then we'll play a funny video. I've got a very good funny video for you guys. Actually, you're going to really enjoy this one. For you. Why did you trust them to start with? Says Larry the Cat. I don't know. He has Elton background. Gerard probably know why. They could have used a cocktail umbrella for him, but he still would have been too. It would have been too big. So it's Mad Monk 33. They could have put some sort of cover for him. They could have done something like that. That's true, David. They could have done something. Yeah. Did you watch the stage question on the Rishi campaign? The councillor acted as a regular voter. I saw the video from Max Robespierre. I have not covered that. I don't know if I'll have a chance to cover it, I'm afraid. But Max has already got that covered there. But I don't know if I'll get. I don't know if I'll get a chance to cover it. If I'm in all honesty. Mistook them for your scratching tree, hey Solari. Good to see you all. Please don't vote Conservative, please, says Politics Channel. I don't think anyone here intends to vote Conservative, if I'm absolutely honest. Rumour has it that someone stole the umbrella. I know nothing about that. Honest, guys, says Solari the Cat. Surely you don't know nothing about it. Yeah, of course. You're innocent, Solari. You're completely innocent. Drippy Rishi was forced out of the door in the rain, and he was told the 1922 committee, get out there or we'll sack you. I don't know. We don't know the truth. We honestly just don't know if that was going to be the case or not. I know Dave McGuinness has said, obviously, that he's got his children ready for college and school and whatnot over in America, which is why they pulled it here at this time as well. So that's entirely a possibility as well. I think Rishi's bosses had an emergency meeting and finally Rishi got told resign or we'll resign you. Maybe. As long as nothing happens and nothing just stops the general election marching ahead, that's all that matters. The general election marching ahead on July the 4th now. Sunak knows the luck affects the UK economy's head and stabilising and downfall are ending, and he wants to leave the rotten pineapple enigma for Labour, he says there. You can blame later when they've screwed up, not now, lol, says Stu Viking President. Yeah, you can't, and the thing is, when Labour come to power, you've got to give them a time. You've got to give them time to do stuff as well. We have to be realistic if they get overall control. We have to be realistic about it as well. But yeah, Navarro and MTG would do anything for you not to vote Labour though. Yes and no, I would say on that. Makes more sense. Enough time to organise removal vans and retrieve the green card from the back of the sofa to stop. Yes, that indeed. I don't know if you guys have seen this funny video. So, yeah, this is. I've already played this earlier and I couldn't stop laughing. So I hope you guys enjoy this funny video. This here on. Oh, I'm just gonna play it.
It is raining, and I have no umbrella. With me and this government, things can only get wetter, better. Steve, turn it off, please. We could have recorded this under something, but we decided not to. Because roofs, umbrellas, shelters, they're all incredibly woke. And that's why we're doing our best to separate vulnerable people from their roofs and their shelters. It's what we've been doing for the past 14 years. We promised you sunlit uplands. And what you've got is sewagey wetlands, but they're our sewagey wetlands. It is time to call a general election because I am sick and tired of this and I want to move to Silicon Valley. We have made it rain in many, many ways. Backtracking on green policies to make the weather less predictable. Financially, we've made it absolutely poor on Rwanda so we can send exactly 0 people there. 5 PMs in the past 10 years. We have a plan, and that plan is to confidently tell you it isn't raining. I am not wet. I am charismatic. The Supreme Court is foreign. We lowered inflation. We care about you. Poverty is a choice. Protest is a crime. There are no refugees, there are no asylum seekers, there are only small boats. Everything good in the past 14 years was us. Everything bad was whichever marginalised group we chose that week. You are more powerful when you're divided. Stay that way. When you go to the polls, don't think of the politicians. Don't think of the businesses. Think of the people who started doing satire online, are doing their debut Edinburgh shows this year, and now are completely
Damn it, I wish you didn't play that goddamn music, because I'm going to have to mute it. I'm going to have to mute it because of copyright. I wish you didn't play that music, as much as I love it. But yeah, you heard it. So if you were here live, you got to hear it. But if you're watching this on record, you're not going to be able to hear it again because of copyright, because you decided to play music. One person's opinion that really matters, who we've not heard for a long time, is our good friend Colin from Portsmouth.
Colin from Portsmouth is on the line. Hello, Colin.
4D chess from Sunak.
In calling an election,
the
yes?
timing of it.
Yeah.
That's when the Conservatives are at their lowest polling ever, slammed on one side by the Lib Dems and Reform on the other. He calls an election. That's
Yes.
the last thing Starmer was expecting. It's genius.
During a football tournament as well. We know how he loves his football.
England will be out by then. Perfect moment for the nation to dust itself off and reunite in glory.
The economy won't have recovered, though. Everyone will still hate him, Colin. That's my fear.
Starmer hasn't got a chance. He's
Right.
focusing on trivial things like an NHS in crisis,
Yes.
sewage in rivers,
Yes.
record numbers of small boats,
Absolutely.
and children in poverty.
Yeah.
But Sunak knows what a woman is. He can't lose.
He does, yes. He's Westminster's Susan Hall, isn't he, Colin?
On the 4th of July as well. Independence Day.
Independence Day.
Independence from the woke elite. The shackles cast over us by the Liberals. And if it doesn't work, he could just fly back to his beach house in California and enjoy the fireworks.
Perfect.
Safe in the knowledge that he doesn't have to spend a minute longer in this sorry country ever again. Anyway, mate, thanks for having me on. Love to the family.
Love to the family, Colin. Love to the family.
Free at last. Free at last. Thank God Almighty, we're free at last.
Is that Martin Luther King?
No, George Michael.
Yes, of course.
Well, at least that one I don't need to mute. Oh, I'm so glad that they actually had when the general election announcement was called, they tweeted as like, oh, we need to change our script, and yeah, they scrambled to get this out as quickly as possible. They did, so fair play to them for doing that. Did you guys enjoy the show? I think Ollie enjoyed the show. Yeah, he enjoyed the show. Don't mute the mic. Don't mute the mic. I've got to watch it on there. But yeah, the gang is here. The gang will be back here tomorrow. So they will be here tomorrow because, believe it or not, guys, I have another live stream tomorrow. Yes, I do. We have ran out of time today, guys. It has been a long live stream. I want to say a massive thank you to everyone who's come along. Thank you so much for those who've given super chats. Thank you, Alistair Keir, once again for the gifted memberships. It's greatly appreciated. Thanks for all your comments. If I haven't caught all of them, I do apologise. I do try to catch as much comments as I possibly can. But yeah, thanks for all your engagement, guys. I really do appreciate it. So just a quick reminder, just before you head out, I will be back tomorrow with a live stream at 6 p.m. or 6 p.m. tomorrow. We will be covering world news. We will not be covering UK news. We'll be covering world news. So if you guys are interested in news and whatnot's happening outside the UK, you come and hang out we'll talk about them. I might try and get one or two bits about the stuff in Gaza because we didn't cover Gaza today as well. So I'll probably get 1 or 2 on Gaza as well, just because obviously we haven't had much to discuss on that, obviously, as well. So if you guys want to talk about that and that, feel free to come and join me at 6 o'clock tomorrow for the Snowflake Corner there. And just a reminder, tomorrow as well, I will be making it available to members. I've got plenty of content coming over the next couple of days, all the way up till Monday. I've recorded for you guys as well. Keep an eye out for the thumbnails, guys. There will be. I've made any videos regarding the election. I've done purple color thumbnails and highlighted them as that. And there's now a playlist going to be on my channel called General Election 2024. So any videos I do specifically on the general election will be all in one place on my channel, so you guys can. So as we continue to make videos and live streams and videos and whatnot, it'll all be in one place for you guys. So if you want to roll back or missed any election videos, they'll be all in one place, and it'll be specifically highlighted in purple color. So if you look out for that thumbnail on the channel, obviously that would be greatly appreciated. So thanks again, everyone, for today. I really have a great evening, whatever you guys are doing. And hopefully I'll see you guys tomorrow. And hopefully I'll see, if not tomorrow, hopefully I'll see you later on Max's live stream as well, because I'm looking forward to Max's live stream and getting his views, because we haven't had a, obviously be interested to hear how engaging with us on the chat. Obviously that I'm really looking forward to that. And yeah, it's on, guys. It's on. The general election is on. So and for those obviously who didn't see it, please check out the live stream we did yesterday. I did with Big Mad Studios. Really, really good. I'm so glad I got to do that with him, and I want to do it again with other people. I want to arrange one with All Shorts. I want to arrange something with David McGuinness at some time in the future. I also want to arrange one with Ollie Bowler Hatman, and maybe at some point I can talk to Graham and maybe do something with Graham Hughes at some point, or maybe with No Justice down the road. Like just to have these discussions and whatnot about the election. I think that was really good conversation. So hopefully I can do that with other YouTubers down the road, but we'll wait and see how those things happen, guys. But plenty to talk about. But just before you go, guys, I just need if you can do one more thing for me. If you haven't already, please hit the like button. We greatly appreciate it. Share this across social media so others are notified of this video, and subscribe, because it really does help support the channel. And if you want to go one step further, financially support me and the work that I do here, you can do so by becoming a YouTube member for as little as 99p. Or you can join me on Rumble, Patreon, or Facebook for exclusive content on those platforms. So thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to catch you all very, very soon.